ABC General Hospital spoilers for next week, February 2nd to February 6th, revealed that Willow's determination to regain custody of Wiley and Amelia had grown more intense and calculated with each passing day. What began as a desire to protect her children from what she believed were unsafe conditions had quickly evolved into an all-out legal battle. Her actions, once driven by maternal love, now seemed to have a darker undertone. Willow wasn't just fighting for her children's well-being anymore. She was fighting for control, for power, and for a future where she had the authority to make decisions about their lives without interference. The more Willow pursued this case, the more aggressive her tactics became. She was no longer making small, seemingly innocent decisions about their care. She was making moves that would secure her position as the primary decision-maker in their lives. Her desire to win the custody battle had begun to overshadow everything else, and it was creating new conflicts that neither she nor Michael could ignore. Michael, already emotionally drained from the ongoing battle, found himself increasingly cornered by Willow's actions. The legal proceedings, which had started out as a way to settle differences and ensure the best interest of the children, had become a battlefield. Willow's relentless pursuit of sole custody began to wear on him. Every move she made felt like an attack on his role as a father, and every argument left him questioning whether he was doing enough. For Sunny, this situation was starting to feel like a pressure cooker about to explode. Willow, once a woman of quiet strength and compassion, was now playing a dangerous game of manipulation. Her desire to regain control over her children's lives had pushed her further into the legal fight, and the more she pressed, the more it became clear that she wasn't considering the emotional cost of her actions. The children, though too young to fully understand the complexities of the case, couldn't escape the tension that hung in the air. The fight for custody was affecting everyone, from Michael to Sunny, and it seemed that no one would emerge unscathed. As the battle continued, Willow's determination turned into something more desperate. She had already sacrificed so much. The thought of losing this case, of losing the children, became unbearable. But her quest for control had started to cloud her judgment. In the process of trying to protect her children, she was losing sight of the very thing that mattered the most, their well-being. Meanwhile, Michael, while deeply invested in the case, began to feel the strain on his relationship with Willow. The constant back and forth, the legal maneuvers, and the emotional toll it all took had begun to drive a wedge between them. What once was a shared goal to ensure the children's safety and happiness had become a personal war between two people who had once cared for each other deeply. The more they fought for what they believed was right, the more they lost touch with one thing they both needed to prioritize: the children's emotional security. The tension was palpable. Neither side seemed willing to back down, and with each passing day, the strain on their family only intensified. While Willow continued to push for custody, Michael found himself questioning his ability to be the father his children needed. He had always been a man of integrity, someone who had fought for what was right, but now he was struggling to hold onto the relationship he once cherished with Willow. The emotional toll on both of them had become unbearable. Sunny watched the situation unfold with growing concern. He had seen firsthand how quickly family dynamics could shift, how legal battles could tear people apart. And while he sympathized with both Willow and Michael, he knew that this battle wasn't just about who got custody. It was about control. And control, once lost, was nearly impossible to regain. As the case continued to unfold, Willow's strategy began to shift. She wasn't just playing the role of a concerned mother anymore. She was fighting for dominance, for power, and the deeper she went into the fight, the more she realized that her tactics were pushing Michael away. What had started as an attempt to protect her children was now unraveling the very fabric of her family. In the end, the legal battle between Willow and Michael wasn't just about custody. It was about trust, power, and the fragile nature of their relationship. As they both fought for what they believed was right, they were losing sight of the one thing that mattered the most: the children's happiness and stability. The emotional toll on both of them was evident, and the damage was already starting to show. In their desire to win, they had forgotten the true goal of this battle: the well-being of Wiley and Amelia. As the case drew to a close, the question remained: who would walk away victorious, and would it be worth the cost? Josslyn had always been a young woman with a fire inside her, but now it had become a fire she could no longer control. Her actions, once driven by emotion and a desire to protect those she loved, had now spiraled into something far more dangerous. When she sabotaged the power station at Windermere, the consequences were far more severe than she had anticipated. What began as an act of defiance, a way to bring attention to the chaos she felt surrounded by, quickly escalated. In the blink of an eye, her simple act of destruction became an all-consuming crisis. Now the authorities were involved, and Josslyn found herself facing the very real threat of arrest. But Josslyn was not alone in this. Lucas, her friend and confidant, had always been someone she could count on. Someone who understood the pressures and turmoil that weighed on her heart. And now, with Josslyn in danger of being arrested for her actions, Lucas knew he couldn't stand by and let her face the consequences alone. He had to act and fast. Lucas knew the gravity of the situation. Windermere was no ordinary place. It was a powerful symbol of wealth, control, and influence in Port Charles. The sabotage at the power station wasn't just an isolated incident, it was a direct challenge to the people who held power there. The very people who could ruin Josslyn's life. And yet, despite the severity of the situation, Lucas believed there was still a chance to help her. He couldn't let Josslyn be dragged down by the consequences of her own reckless decisions. But the more Lucas worked to help her, the more complicated the situation became. It wasn't just about saving Josslyn from the legal ramifications of her actions. There were darker, more dangerous forces at play, and the further Lucas delved into the situation, the more he realized just how deep the web of conspiracy and manipulation ran. One of the most immediate threats was Marco, a figure who had always been lurking in the background, watching and waiting for the right moment to strike. He had ties to the Windermere power structure and knew how to manipulate situations to his advantage. As Lucas tried to navigate the complicated web of favors and allegiances, he soon realized that helping Josslyn would put him directly in Marco's crosshairs. Marco, who had already shown his willingness to play dirty, had now become a key player in this dangerous game. If Lucas got too close to Josslyn's case, if he made the wrong move, Marco wouldn't hesitate to use his influence to bring Lucas down as well. The stakes were higher than ever, and Lucas knew that in order to save Josslyn, he would have to outmaneuver Marco, all while ensuring he didn't become another victim in this dangerous game. Josslyn's actions had set off a chain reaction that threatened to unravel everything. The sabotage had been reckless, yes, but it was also a symptom of the deeper conflict that raged within her. She was angry, frustrated, and lost, and she had let those emotions cloud her judgment. But in the eyes of those who held power, including Marco, her actions were an opportunity, a chance to exert control, to force her into submission. Lucas, however, wasn't going to let that happen. He knew the stakes. He knew that this wasn't just about saving Josslyn from arrest, it was about saving her from the people who would use her actions to manipulate and control her for their own benefit. But in order to do that, Lucas would have to take risks. He would have to put himself in harm's way, using his own connections and knowledge to manipulate the situation in their favor. With every move Lucas made to protect Josslyn, the danger grew. Marco, with his influence over Windermere, was a formidable opponent. His resources were vast, and his ability to sway those in power was undeniable. As Lucas navigated the treacherous waters of Port Charles's elite, he couldn't help but feel the weight of the danger closing in on him. The more he tried to save Josslyn, the more he realized just how deeply Marco's claws had sunk into the fabric of the city's power structure. In the end, Lucas knew he couldn't do it alone. He would need allies, people who could help him navigate the political and legal labyrinth that was now threatening Josslyn's future. But even as he reached out to those who might help, Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The more he fought to protect Josslyn, the more he felt like he was being drawn into Marco's game. And Marco, for his part, wasn't going to let this situation slip away from him. He saw Josslyn's reckless actions as an opportunity to tighten his grip on Windermere, to manipulate the situation to his own advantage. But what he didn't expect was a determination of Lucas, who, fueled by his loyalty and love for Josslyn, was willing to fight back in ways that Marco couldn't anticipate. As the tension continued to rise, the danger intensified. Josslyn's reckless act had set off a chain of events that no one could fully control. But one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. Whether Lucas could save Josslyn from the legal and personal consequences of her actions, and whether he could outsmart Marco, was still to be determined. But he wasn't backing down. He couldn't. Not when Josslyn's future and his own was on the line. Anna had always prided herself on her ability to keep control of her emotions, to remain composed even in the most dangerous of situations. But now, as the shadows of her past, Faison and Peter continued to haunt her, Anna found herself on the edge, struggling to maintain her usual calm demeanor. What was once a well-structured life was quickly becoming a whirlwind of uncertainty and fear. The ghosts of Faison and Peter had returned, not just as memories, but as very real threats to her sanity, her safety, and even her freedom. For years, Anna had fought to bury the darkness that was Faison, the man who had manipulated and tortured her mind. She had tried to move on to rebuild her life after Peter, her son, had wreaked havoc with her heart and mind. But now both of these figures from her past were resurfacing in ways she couldn't control. Faison's legacy was still alive, and Peter's twisted machinations were never far from the surface. Anna's fears were justified. Her past wasn't just behind her. It was still a looming presence that threatened to tear her life apart once more. But it wasn't just the ghosts of Faison and Peter that Anna had to contend with. As she navigated the turmoil, she discovered that someone new, someone with their own hidden agenda, was now involved in her life: Pascal. At first, Pascal seemed like just another complication in an already messy situation. But the more Anna interacted with him, the more she realized that he was a player in a much larger game. Pascal had his own plans, and Anna quickly found that those plans didn't align with her own. Pascal was subtle, patient, and unnervingly skilled at manipulating situations. He had studied Anna, understood her vulnerabilities, and was now using those weaknesses to his advantage. Anna had been trained to read people, to sense when something wasn't right. But Pascal's control was unlike anything she had faced before. He didn't use brute force or overt threats. He used psychological manipulation, planting seeds of doubt in Anna's mind, pushing her to question her every move, her every decision. She could feel the grip tightening around her, but the more she fought back, the stronger his influence seemed to become. It wasn't long before Anna realized the extent of Pascal's control over her. He had begun to subtly direct her actions, steering her away from certain paths and toward others. At first, it seemed like coincidence, but as the days passed, Anna could see the pattern. Pascal wasn't just trying to control her in the moment, he was playing a long game, carefully maneuvering Anna into a corner where she would have no choice but to comply. He had figured out her weaknesses, her fears, and used them against her. The shock of this realization hit Anna hard. She had always been in control, always able to outthink her enemies and navigate the most dangerous of situations. But now she was being manipulated in a way that left her feeling helpless. Pascal's quiet influence was driving her to make decisions that she never would have considered on her own. He was playing on her fears, her guilt, and her sense of responsibility, pushing her to take actions that were contrary to everything she believed in. Anna's situation had become a delicate balance between survival and surrender. As she tried to push back against Pascal's control, the consequences grew more dangerous. The more she resisted, the more Pascal tightened his grip. He had studied her, understood her better than anyone else ever had. And now he was using that knowledge to push her further into a corner. Each move she made, each attempt to regain control seemed to play right into his hands. What made the situation even more complex was the ongoing threat of Faison and Peter. The fear of their return, the fear of what they might do to her and those she loved, was a constant weight on Anna's shoulders. Pascal knew this. He knew how deeply Faison's manipulation had scarred her, how Peter's betrayal had destroyed her trust in those closest to her. And he used that knowledge to drive a wedge between Anna and those she cared about. Pascal wasn't just controlling her actions, he was isolating her, making her believe that she couldn't trust anyone. As Anna struggled to break free from Pascal's grasp, she realized that the dangers were greater than she had ever imagined. Pascal wasn't just a player in a game, he was the architect of her undoing. And as the walls closed in on her, Anna had to make a choice: continue to fight for control and risk losing everything, or surrender to Pascal's manipulation in an attempt to survive. Neither option was appealing, but Anna had always known how to navigate the darkest of waters. She had survived Faison, survived Peter's lies. But now the stakes were higher than ever. The danger wasn't just physical. Pascal's control was a psychological trap, and Anna found herself questioning everything she once knew. Who could she trust? What was real? And most terrifying of all, was she becoming just another puppet in Pascal's cruel game?